What's up, guys? On this episode of Blood, Sweat, and Gear, I'm hanging out with contest prep coaches Skip Hill and Nelson Jones. We've got a couple topics for the day. We are going to discuss handling your training during a contest prep or a cut, and we're going to discuss muscle imbalances. After that, we've got a bunch of questions written in from you guys, our listeners and viewers, and we're going to kick the show off talking about a great bodybuilder we recently lost, Andy Hammond. If you guys enjoy the show, if you're entertained, if you learned something, do me a favor, hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, we have several bodybuilding podcasts coming out each week. We'd love to have you along for all of them. All right, guys, let's get to the show. I've never said this before. So for the people on YouTube, this show comes out every other week. So it's going to be out Fridays every other week, opposite of Muscle Minds. I've put the pieces together 1,000 times in my head, but I've never said that. So I think that'll help people understand the formula. We have a bunch of listener questions today, like a plethora, a ton. We're going to get to those. We had a couple topics we were going to talk about. But first, I wanted to address the fact that we lost a great bodybuilder this week. Andy Hammond passed away. And it's interesting because I've heard some of the younger, newer guys that are like, I didn't really know who Andy Hammond was, but man, he was something else. You knew, I mean, you guys both knew him, right? Skip?
Well, yeah, being in Colorado, I mean, he lived in Colorado Springs or Black Forest, just outside of Colorado Springs.
Okay.
He was a very lively, unique personality. And he did a lot for I don't want to say for the industry. He did a lot related to the industry. He did a lot for kids. He did a lot of charitable stuff. He was about as much of a family guy. I didn't see, unless he was traveling, I didn't see any pictures of him without either his wife or his family. He had been with his wife, I think, since high school, and they were very tight. And they would do a lot of it's funny because people may not even know Andy Hammond, but they may know the guy, the guy with the blonde spiked hair who did, was Mr. Incredible.
Yeah.
Because he would go through these elaborate, paint setups, and it looked pretty badass, but he would involve his kids and his family in that sometimes too, when they could travel. They were just very, very tight. It's funny because my wife followed Andy quite a bit, and she was just always so taken by the fact that he was so devoted to his family and that sort of thing. It's really sad. Anytime anyone passes, it's sad, but the fact that it was so abrupt and that sort of thing it's just horrible. I feel, in situations like this, I people always say, it's, rest in peace, Andy and stuff. And everybody, says different things and they mean well and the intention is there. But I feel horrible for his wife and for his family because they were so close. And at 55, that's just really, really young, man.
Let me tell you now that I'm getting closer to that. When you're 25, you're like, oh yeah, he was really old. He should have been done, with all that stuff by now, but it comes up fast. So, I feel like I can see it on the horizon. It's a ways off for me, but it's out there. I'll tell you what, I have never heard anybody say anything bad about Andy Hammond outside of one thing. People thought he used fake plates. Did you ever hear that?
They did.
But I'll tell you what, VJ, my partner from Bodybuilding Nerds Radio, so he used to live in Iowa. Andy and his family did. So VJ met him back in like 2005. VJ was like in his 20s, early 20s. He was a natural competitor. And so he saw Andy Hammond and he said, like, this dude looks so big. He was he was a really big dude. And I think that kind of gets underplayed sometimes because he's like such a fun personality. He was a big dude and he was strong. So the video I saw them calling out, he was benching like 4 or 5 plates and he was making it look like it was no deal. VJ said he would watch him walk in the gym, put 4 plates on the bar and just pump them out for 10, 15 reps like it was a warm up. Just out the gate, man.
Yeah. And I don't want to forget too, or leave out, he was a top collegiate wrestler in Iowa too. I think I don't want to be wrong, but Iowa State or something, one of the bigger Division I schools there. But he's got a very athletic background. I think, in fact, before he was a phys ed teacher, I believe, before he retired from that and would travel more with bodybuilding and that sort of thing. Okay. I don't want to get off on tangents, but the fact that he was big, it's funny that you say that about the plates, because it's the only thing that I've ever heard negative. And it was funny because power lifters are the ones that got on him. And there's nothing worse to a power lifter than a bodybuilder who's in great shape and can put up big numbers. And they wanted to try to strip the strength thing because they said it was too. I think they said he was using fake plates. I think that's what it came down to. And it's funny because it came up on intense muscle.
Yeah.
And I pissed off a lot of power lifters by blowing them off. And I mean, these were, well-known guys, and they ended up leaving intense muscle and never came back. Only one did, and we're good friends to this day. But it was because I had to apologize because I told those powerlifters, I'm like, basically it's Andy Hammond, and I live close enough to him. I know what this guy can do, and you guys are just fucking wrong.
Nelson,
bottom line, now you're going to negotiate it.
You represent the younger demographic on our show.
Maybe I'm kind of old now at this point.
To me, you're the youngster. So, you knew about Andy, right?
Yeah, I met him at a Dymatize booth a long time ago.
Okay.
Yep.
And I mean, obviously, I started reading the magazines in 2008.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like he was there then, and that was probably he was more prominent then than he was, in like 2016 or something.
Yeah.
But he spent way too much time with me. He didn't even talk to me for that long. Like, and I was very annoying a long time ago. I just asked too many questions, not considerate of people in line or anything like that. It's like, oh, I waited for 4 people. I should be able to stand here for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So, and of course, yeah, it's like, talked to me for a long time. Very, very considerate. It's funny you say that. It's like, I think he won his card as a super heavy, right?
I would think so because he was a really tall.
So I mean, it's like the guy
human.
was really big, and so now it's a little more popular to see people throwing like actually benching 5 plates.
Yeah,
I mean, you see Ian does it, Akeem can do it. I mean, well, I said 2 people, but heck, I'm pretty sure we saw Luke put up like 4.5 on incline. It's a lot more of like a common thing. He was just big and freaky and strong a little while ago, when it wasn't as common. But I mean, it's the same thing. Like we've talked about this before. It's like how 4-plate bent over rows wasn't a thing 10 years ago where it's everybody doing it. And now on Instagram, maybe because you just know it's a possibility, you see all these people doing it.
Yeah.
And he was a freak strong guy. But it's funny, more than that, yeah. He was a really good guy.
Yeah.
And that does need to be recognized for sure.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we've got a couple topics here, and then we are going to get into a bunch of listener questions. We're probably going to keep this one a little bit short. I'm still recovering, but we're going to get in what we can here. So our topics, the first thing we're going to discuss was transitioning into a contest. How does your training change? And then from there, we were going to go into some talk about muscle imbalances. Skip may or may not have had a knee issue. We're going to talk a little bit about that and talk about, what I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know. We're going to get to it though.
We're going to wing it. That's what we're going to do.
So Nelson, do you have people change things up when they go into a contest prep?
Almost never.
Skip?
Almost never.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same cliche, you dance with the one that brought you, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but Dante's words have rung in a lot of people's heads and ears for a long time in that sense. You do have to take into consideration recovery. So when it comes to volume and high intensity techniques and things like that, you have to be careful because anytime you're reducing caloric intake or increasing caloric output, it's going to tap in or potentially tap into recovery. So that has to be taken into. But as far as training heavy or training the same style, the same exercises, things like that, I don't think a whole lot should be changing. It was funny because back in the 80s, and I'm dating myself with this, but it was very popular and kind of accepted that, when you're in prep, you're doing higher reps, and when you're in the off season, you're doing lower reps. And it then went to, that's silly. You shouldn't do that. But there does come a point, I think, in prep where you do have to understand your limitations physically, and you may have to increase your rep ranges. It may not be as black and white as, well, you're in prep, you need high reps, and when you're not, you need low reps, but you do have to listen to your body too. And there's a lot of variables there that you got to take into consideration. Otherwise, if you push all the way through, I mean, at some point your strength isn't typically going to be what it was in the off season. If you're a good prep guy, most of your clients are going to hold a lot of that strength until it gets closer to the show. And there's other factors too, whether you're on during the off season and, or if you're gassed to the gills when you're, during prep, there are other factors, but there are some things that have to be tweaked. Do you agree, Nelson?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think and you were kind of alluding to it. The only thing that needs to really be considered, assuming recovery and everything's good, is as the joint integrity starts to be a little wobbly, you're getting really lean, and all of a sudden those 7-plate hack squats start shearing your knee. It's like, maybe you need to start just pushing the intensity with, let's say you're doing 6 rep sets aren't the way to go anymore. Right. Maybe you want to pull it back. You're still going to failure with, 2 less plates, but you're pushing it to 20 reps. I don't think there's anything wrong with, and personally, I prefer it. I think it's better to push sets for 20 to 30 when you're doing leg press, hack squats, things like that. I think it just murders your legs. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with but on like a leg press, if you're doing 6 reps or 8 reps on a leg press, that is heavy. And I don't know, for a lot, most people's knees, dude, they just can't even handle it. And of course, there's some like iron freaks who it doesn't matter what, like you could do singles on a leg press if you really wanted to. But there's going to be some point in your evolution where you're going to have to rethink your training because you're not 22 anymore. And I feel like for a lot of us, as we get really lean, that shines through even more. It's like, oh, okay, well, not only am I like feeling kind of wobbly, but I can feel my joints really hard every time I do a rep.
Absolutely.
Right.
Maybe so it's like I'm not destroying my body and I can't walk next week as far as from actual joint kind of pain. Because by the time you get to the show, you don't want to be not being able to train legs because your joints hurt so bad. So it's like, what's better? Is it better to keep it the exact same because, we're supposed to? And I do agree with keep it the exact same. Keep it the exact same as long as you possibly can.
Right.
But I don't know. I guess there is a point where, for me, let's say I'm only doing 2 sets of 8. I might have to start, and it could be, and through prep, that you're pushing that same weight up to 12, and you're working it all the way to 20. So you are using the same weight throughout all of prep, and you just got stronger the whole way. And that would be ideal because you're growing the whole time.
And I don't want anybody who's listening to think, well, now, wait a minute. Nelson and Skip just contradicted the dance with the one who brought you. Just to clarify, and you make a good point, you stay with it as long as you can while you're listening to your body and you be smart about it. The other thing is, though, too, when you mentioned 20 and 30 rep squats, I think there's a lot of people out there who think that may not be an off-season type thing. That's something that I would do in the off-season because it's a shock technique. So if you think, well, gosh, that's not an off-season, of course it is. Those things would be thrown in an off-season for shock value. And when I say shock on the muscle, a stimulus that it hasn't seen before, there's where you get adaptation. So that would be done and can be done during prep to save the joints like you're talking about, and essentially not put yourself in as vulnerable position or as when it comes to risk of injury.
It's not saving central nervous system. It's going to be very, very hard. It's just, and I agree. I do Widowmaker sets every single week.
Yeah.
I think they're super valuable. But yeah, I 100% agree with what you said. It just, I think I don't change volume or really very much. The only thing is once I get to a certain point, I kind of check myself. Whereas before I'm like, wrap it tighter. You're doing it, It's like you hate it too. And it's like when your training partners are there, and especially if they're in off season, which is good for you for the push. But if they're like, suck it up, you did 7 plates last week, and that your knee's hurting. Yeah. Like something's wrong. And you're like, there's always like the be a man, look like a
there's
lady.
a topic. There's a good topic right there. The pros and cons of training by yourself or with a training partner.
Yeah.
You'll have to knock that one or write that one down, Scott. We'll do that on a future show.
I will. That is a good one. I have a thought, because when you guys are talking about this, I've had preps where I've remained fairly strong, as strong as you can expect to be. And then I've had a couple preps, specifically the 2 times that I pushed for like insane leanness. My second show, I pushed for insane leanness. And then again in 2015, I just pushed as far as I could, as hard as I could. I didn't care how much I lost in the process. And I could have competed like low 190s. And I ended up competing the day I stepped on stage, carved up, I was 181. So it was dramatic. And I remember being in the gym, just like hating every minute of training because it just wasn't fun anymore. I could get a pump, but I was so weak, and it was like that for a long period of time. And I know it's just because I was just so beat down. Have you guys ever, I'm sure you have, but like how bad has it gotten for each of you at like on a bad prep, like a prep where you got weak?
Well, I think anytime you're in prep, you're going to have prep. Let's put it this way. If you prep long enough, you're going to have preps where you're in the green room. And I had one last year, and everything was clicking. Everything was beautiful. Everything was going as good as can be expected, and sometimes better. Then other times you're going to fight, and sometimes and really fight and suffer and feel tortured. Yeah. And sometimes the end result isn't any different. Yeah. And it's kind of funny because you would think that, I know in your situation, that specific situation you're talking about, Scott, yes, you ended up, leaner but you admitted you didn't care what the weight was. You just wanted to get as lean as you could. Yeah. But most preps, I think really in the end, as long as you know how to, and it's that last week, making sure that you peak, because sometimes if you run yourself into the ground, then you have a hard time filling out and peaking in. You end up with a little bit of an over diet, or what I call a stringy type of look. But you have those signs. I mean, I can't remember the last time I'm sure it's there, but I'm old. I can't even remember what I had for breakfast. But I'm sure that those are there where I drove myself in the ground, in 16? Asked for that because it's that more, and Nelson touched on it earlier. Even though we prep people and we have all this experience and stuff, when it comes to our training, we will sometimes do the things that we don't say. Yeah. It's not a do as I say, or it is a do as I say, not as I do, not a do as I say because I do the same shit. And I will come out of it with tendonitis or a sprained LCL and have no one to blame but myself. I would go so far as to say this: like, if you end up with an injury, if you look inside yourself deep and hard enough and you're insightful enough, you'll find out you fucked up somewhere and you didn't see a sign or you did something you shouldn't have. I take issue when people say, well, it came out of the blue. It probably didn't. It came out of the blue to you because you didn't know how to read the signs. Yeah, you did something different. Exactly. Yeah.
It's funny, actually. I remember there was a podcast. Joe Rogan had Matthew Walker on, and he's like a sleep scientist. Okay. And he had was talking about some studies with athletes. And looking across the board, almost all of the athletes who had injuries did it when they were sleeping 6 hours or less.
Huh. That's a good one. Yeah.
And so it's like there's something like obviously with recovery, and it could be like you're tired, so you're not doing things intelligently, or things like that. But I guess there's a lot that can go into it. But that's something to kind of think about in prep. Really, man, to sleep. I thought of 2 examples from preps. And one, I will say this is the worst I ever looked. So I know that this supplement is very it's the Holy Grail. I think Skip might already know what I'm talking about. The worst I ever looked was doing DNP on a prep. That is the weakest I've ever been.
Sure. Yeah.
My entire life. It was terrible. I looked awful.
But did you die?
No, I didn't die.
Okay. But did you die? That's the end question, right?
No, I didn't die. I didn't die. I didn't die. It was, but God, I didn't look good. And then last year, this touches on what Skip said about how long are you really going? So last year I started prep in February, and my show was supposed to be in June. Mm-hmm. So I my strength was killer the whole time.
Yeah.
That was one of like the smoothest, easiest, everything was clicking kind of preps. Now, during that time, Junior Nationals was canceled. That's what I was going to do.
Yep.
And then 2 other shows were canceled. So I pulled back, and then I was going to do a show in November.
Yeah.
I only took like 4 weeks of eating a little higher, then I went right back in. So that's February, and then I got around like October, and I'm like, this ain't it.
Yeah.
This ain't it. And it's like, and that was, if I were really reflecting back, I had known that for 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Yeah.
But I'm like, maybe it will fix itself. Maybe it'll fix itself. Like something. And it's just like, I'm getting weaker every week, drained. It just looks soft. And just like things are getting worse. And I'm like, well, tighten up and it won't matter. And no. So there's something to be said. Like, and if it was a client who was trying to like, oh, let me just turn this around a couple of weeks and then I'll do it in November. It's like, no, are you retarded? This is freaking, it's a year. You're prepping for a year.
Yeah. Hydration's another one I want to throw in really quick, because I know we got to jump topics here. Hydration, I think, is something like, you get people, because I get people that I work with who will drink a consistent amount of fluid constantly, right? And I say, well, are you hydrated? And they say, yeah, I drink this much every day. But that changes as you get leaner, how much water you need. And I think that for me, I see just a huge difference in my strength based on how hydrated my muscle is. So I actually started using an electrolyte supplement, and I found it helps me a lot. It's more, I used to just do like just the straight sodium, and be like, oh, get the sodium in, you're good. But with a balanced electrolyte, I feel like I'm very consistent. And then when, in a place where I wouldn't necessarily have as much endurance, I have better endurance because I have just better overall muscle hydration. I think that that's a big factor in that strength and being able to, continue pushing hard for longer. I'm not saying you could do that for 9 months dieting from, and I know what you mean, man. I dieted my last shows where I started February, went through November, and I was pretty darn weak by the end of that, I held it for a while, but Yeah.
I would have avoided that injury last year. Had my show been when it was supposed to be. I mean, it really is that. And it's funny because as experienced as we are, we know the time frame that we have. And when that gets changed, and it gets changed quite a bit, that doesn't happen a lot. Right. So it's not something we're as well versed. We're not as experienced with such a radical change, or when you don't even know it's going to happen. My shows were pushed, but I wasn't sure exactly how far. So those are things that, we still fall back on our experience, but at the same time, I just know I would not have come out of that with an injury. I can't say I wouldn't have. I might have blown that hip getting into my car. I'm not sure, but it probably wouldn't have been in the gym.
Yeah. But also, I'm sure you would agree that even though, if someone wrote that down on paper for you, logically, you might have thought differently than it happening to you. Where it's absolutely. Well, this much time, maybe I should probably take some time off. This person should look like, let's do something here instead of I can make it.
Right.
All right. So next topic we're going to discuss before we got to our listener questions is imbalances. I'm not sure.
Put your gloves on. Put your gloves on.
I'm not sure where we're going with this, but I feel like Skip has a different opinion than Nelson does.
Well, it came up on the last podcast when Nelson was on the show.
Yeah.
And the points that Nelson made, I agreed with. But I was going to take it further, but we were kind of long on the topic anyway. And I think most of the listeners, I assume that most of the listeners knew how I felt about imbalances, because I've talked about them before. So the question came up on the Advices page on Facebook, and it was about how to train those imbalances and how to bring them up. And Nelson makes a good point, and I agree with this. From a neurological standpoint, on paper, the studies show that the weaker side, when not being trained, and correct me if I'm wrong, if this is not what you said, but the weaker side, when not being trained, if you train the strong side, there is the neurological component that will help that when you come back off the injury, that weak side will essentially catch up quicker. Am I...
It breaks down less. It breaks down less is what
breaks down less. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Now, where I disagree is when I'm going to do it this way. Okay, you have your weak side and you have your strong side. Okay, it may break down less, but my concern is when you come back, I don't think you should train at all. Like, you shouldn't train the strong side. So I'm going to back up my explanation for that. Because you're stronger on one side and weaker on the other, when you come back, the way that most people train, I'm going to use the bench press as an example. If you train, or even a dumbbell press, once you get to failure, you get close to failure, typically what happens is the form on the weak side is going to fail, and you're going to get shitty reps, and the lats are going to take over the tris, and the shoulders are going to take over. You're going to get a couple more reps. So what you have in a situation like that is the strong side will continue to get stronger. And I want to get into there we go, because there's a delay. The strong side will get stronger and the weak side will get stronger as well, but they still stay imbalanced much longer. If you train the weak side, and I would focus on the weak side, I call it training the weak side. You're training both sides, left and right, at the same time. But what you're doing is, as soon as the weak side fails, that set's done. And you have to be able to know when your form starts to falter, whether and I'm using, again, the bench press as an example. If you have to tuck your elbow slightly or something to that effect to change the mechanics, you should not go further than that, because then at that point, you're training the weak side and stopping at failure. The demand on the weak side is more than the demand on the strong side, even with the same weight. So then it closes that gap quicker, because the strong side doesn't continue to progress like it would if there were a couple more reps or that side was taken to failure. Basically, what you're doing is you're taking one side, the weak side, to failure, and you're in a sense under training the strong side. Yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, it may have been that I misunderstood what you said, because I agree that neurologically it can help to keep the weak side from degrading as much or atrophying as much.
Yeah,
okay,
that was
so
the
then
point.
then it's not. Then we don't disagree. That's not fun.
And I don't disagree with what you're saying either necessarily. What I would think is you want, or if I were personally to do this, let's say I tore my tricep, what I would probably be doing is I would probably train the non-toward side, just because you're putting blood in. It's allegedly it's going to help the other side. And when I start resuming training, I would do what you're saying, absolutely, because I would never keep pushing reps when this one's acting wonky. If one side is, because
but you're an experienced trainee. You've been training for a long time. If you take a client who's relatively new and they have an injury, they may not know that. I mean, you can go in and see how people bench sometimes. You could tell it's like, oh my God, your left side is so much weaker. Like, holy shit, if you would train it the right way, it wouldn't be imbalanced like that.
I do think you make a very important point, which is you can only push to failure of the side that is weaker. Right. Once you go further than that, you're doing yourself more of a disservice.
Sure. Mm-hmm. I would agree.
Absolutely agree.
And you just don't get away from that imbalance. That you always have that imbalance.
Even maybe more so than that, you're probably just looking for another injury.
Oh, absolutely. The vulnerability is
huge, if it's already weak and you're just pushing past where that can even go, that side's going to tear again.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can move on to some questions then.
Sorry, I didn't disagree with you.
That was so not fun. I know. It's like, God.
I bet. It's funny when you had told me about the topic that we were talking about earlier. I thought you were talking to Scott, that he was the one who had said something that you disagree with. That's why I kind of didn't register. I'm like, oh, that was fun. I totally forgot about the topic.
All right, we got a bunch of questions here, guys. And I saw Martin Fitzwater's with us. Nelson's
Martin, what's up?
How's he doing, man? What's he got going on? Well, tell us while I find these questions.
Yeah.
And I crack a beer. Just kidding. It's a monster.
Oh, well, that's disappointing. Martin is getting ready for the Tampa Pro.
Okay.
So I think he's currently training at Flex's gym.
He just had a hernia thing, didn't he?
Didn't he hernia? Yeah. And he had 2 surgeries, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Surgeries. Yep. Yeah. Both of them. So he had hernia and gyno surgery. He got them done February 9th, I believe. So we're a little over like a month and a few weeks off. And he started training, I think it was 2 weeks ago. And he wasn't supposed to train before then. So we can call him out in front of all these people. He was not supposed to be training. Yeah. And I'm like, you can do cardio? And he's like, yeah, I definitely want to do cardio. I want to do cardio so I get some blood moving. and cardio turns into arms.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm barely moving. It's like
I can hear it too.
Yeah,
not
like,
working that hard. I'm not working. I saw you on Instagram, dude.
I'm not bracing with my core. It's like upper body legs, which is walking, you know?
Yeah.
So so it started training arms. He's like, I'm barely doing anything. And then, you know, then it started getting like just dipping into other body parts. And there was like a delt day. And it's funny, he was training with Brett for delts.
No, he can't do that. He went not in recovery.
You would think, right? And like, his very first delt day that he did with him, he like did side laterals that were heavier than Brett.
Yeah, it sounds about right. And that's why I said he can't be training with Brett. Martin, you're watching.
Called out in front of everybody.
I know. So now I guess we're to the point because now he can kind of train.
Okay.
I say use your best judgment. But it's not my judgment, it's his judgment. So it is a little questionable.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for watching another podcast here at Think Big Bodybuilding Media. And thank you to our great sponsor, TrueNutrition.com, for making this all possible. TrueNutrition.com is owned by Dante Trudell, the creator of DC Training. He wanted to create a supplement company that offered high-quality, third-party tested supplements at a fair price. High-quality protein powders, just about every type you could think of. Huge variety of flavors, plus health and performance supplements. Check them out, TrueNutrition.com. And hey, if you use our code ADVICES, you directly support our podcasting. Thanks, guys. Let's get back to the program.
Oh, man. All right. Listen, I got a question here. I've been wanting to answer this one since I saw it come up from Rob Taylor. He asks, cold chills an hour after training, could it be dehydration, low blood sugar, central nervous system rebooting? And he adds that he's on 700 test and 380 NPP. Do you guys have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with his gear dosage.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I think it's a good idea that we all laugh at the listener
Use
questions.
more gear.
I think that's a good idea. That'll encourage them to.
But it's good to know. You never know, man. Sometimes
yeah. Better having more information than less. I completely agree.
Yeah,
I saw this question earlier. Here's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And there's more to it because I'd have a couple questions. So hopefully if he's listening as I ramble, he can respond to my question. I'm going with low blood sugar if he has post-workout nutrition that is very quick and very fast in about an hour. If his training is very demanding, and especially if it's demanding and he's in a restricted caloric state, you can go hypo pretty quick after post-workout nutrition, primarily if it's liquid. I know I battle with it hardcore, and it's a matter of 10 minutes. If I will start sweating that I'm going so hypo, and sometimes I'm not even in a deficit. But the point being, the timing, I wonder, because if he did have or does have liquid or very fast post-workout nutrition, that hour could get him, I mean, chills. When you get into chills, and especially if it's consistent, I would say that there's probably, did he say he was sweaty at all? But I mean, chills would,
no, he just said,
that's where I would go
cold
first.
Chills. I had something else a little bit different because I think you guys are right. There could be a hypo thing to it. I had this happen to me in the past, and it was like when I was training with Shelby, I know that I was training now in hindsight, I know that I was training, doing more sets than I should have. And it worked really well for him. I've talked about this. I think for me, would have been better off.
Did you just finish that monster?
He did, didn't he?
I heard that like an empty can click.
It's only been like gone. 2 minutes.
You know, I'm not, look, I know I'm old, 51 now, and I haven't eaten all day, but I've had 2 monsters. I don't see the problem here. And I just killed it, but.
You did.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Scott.
No.
That was like so
need a little energy.
I wonder if it is something to do with the central nervous system. If it's not hypoglycemia, because I think that would be, that would be like the first thing. But I remember and you know where it would be? Like the first thing that would happen is it would be like my nose would get really cold. Like if you take antihistamines, you know how your nose can get really cold, and then I'd start feeling it over my skin. Sometimes it would be even while training, I'd start to get this, even using like highly branched cyclic dextrin in situations I know that it wasn't my blood sugar, situations where I'd be eating and I'd get kind of like just like the best way I could describe it is I felt like I just got out of a car wreck when I'd finished those workouts. Like the way your whole body, like I've done that on leg day where like you get out of that workout, and I don't do it anymore. You feel like you just got hit by a car, like in it. I'm not exaggerating. Like the way you feel shaken up, just everything is just shook. I think that I had been triggering some central nervous system stuff, some central nervous system responses. I don't know. But I've seen things with people who have, oh gosh, my brain's getting really foggy all of a sudden. I'm not 100%, by the way. I'm like almost there, but I'm not good enough to be on a podcast. So I should just turn it over to you guys and I'll think about that one.
Well, because I'm wondering what you mean specifically with central nervous system, because I'm thinking, okay, if you break it down that he's cold to he said chills, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so circulation went from being really good while he was training, assuming that it was really good while he was training, and you're going to be warm and blood flow is going to be real good. Veins are going to be popping. Then all of a sudden, at least surface skin. I wonder where he's cold, if he's just cold from head to toe, or if it's just extremities or what, but then your circulation then would have to, if that's the case, there would be some kind of a circulation issue.
And so the word I was trying to think of is autoimmune, and that you can trigger autoimmune stuff. Like I've known people, in fact, Victoria is one of those people where when she trains really hard, by the end of her workout, she's ice cold. She'll be sweating, but she's
really
like ice cold. Yeah. And it's an autoimmune trigger that happened. So I just wonder, I think that you guys are probably right. The first thing that I jump to is low blood sugar, but then I also wonder too, if it could be, if not that, then some type of an autoimmune response. It's not a common thing. Even like, the extreme would be like Raynaud's, where your skin turns blue. Even that would be like, if you kept going, you'd lose that circulation. And there's like a type of Raynaud's that can get so bad that you can basically get like lose circulation and get like the equivalent of frostbite on your skin. Like you can lose limbs and stuff like that. It's
you're out of my wheelhouse. I've never heard of Raynaud's before.
This is now the new threshold for Are You Training Hard?
Yeah.
Bro,
yeah. Do you have Raynaud's?
I think the next step after Raynaud's is probably rigor mortis, but I don't want to,
All right. I'm just going to randomly grab the next one here. Brad Smith asks, best appetite suppressants when deep in contest prep. The urge to binge is constant. Any ideas to help? Thanks, guys.
Cool. I'll tell you what, mine will be quick.
Okay.
I'll go first because mine will be quick. This is going to sound very arrogant. Okay. And I don't mean it that way. I have my brain is fucked up. It's wired differently. I don't emotionally eat, never have. Food to me, though it can taste good, and I'm kind of a foodie, I don't get so it's uncommon for me to get craved. Something has to be really fucked up and weird. Like I have missed 3 meals, even deep in a prep. I don't have problems with appetite. Maybe it's because I've done it for so long. I've thought about it. I don't know, because I used to have it when I was younger, but I don't have to deal with any type of appetite suppressant. I don't know if it's just locked in my brain because I've done it so long. I'm not sure. So I've got to hand it off to you guys because I don't have anything.
Well, let me ask you a question before I go. Has it always been this way? Because I found that as I've gotten older, my appetite wanes. So were you hungrier when you were 20?
Oh, no question. Yeah, no question. Yep, for sure. Now, there's also a component too, and it's not always, so I don't want to step on anybody's toes here. And again, it can be taken the wrong way. You should, and I tell this to my clients all the time, if you're dieting, you're getting really lean, and Shelby says this all the time too, it's gonna get nasty. You're gonna have hunger. I always want to step into someone else's body or brain to feel their hunger, and just to see, so that I can go, come on, you're being a pussy. That's just not even that bad. Or if I step into their body and go, holy shit, this is what hunger feels like. Holy crap, I've never. So a lot of times, if your diet is dead on, even though you're getting really, really lean, if it's dead on, you're not going to be, in my opinion, you're not going to be as hungry or as ravenous or have those cravings as if sometimes if you go into an over dieted mode, then, and you're just ravenous at 15 weeks out, I'm thinking, damn, I don't know if you should be that hungry that far out. But I do think it's relative. I think that experience in dieting longer, I think the brain at some point just flips a switch and it's just accepted. It's not even something that you think about. But again, I'm talking about me because I've never felt it. I've never been able to feel it from what it feels like for somebody else.
I agree with you. I think to some degree, and you kind of have to just like know that nothing will fix hunger.
Right.
It's like you're gonna be hungry, so it's like there is a degree of you got to suck it up. But there are.
It's like taking the edge off.
But to take the edge off, there are some things.
Right.
Obviously, some people, they like Adderall. If you are 4 weeks out, you have half an Adderall, well, maybe it's time to pop it because, I would probably not do that at 11 p.m. But, if you're about to die after meal one, then maybe it's time. Now, I do not approve of this or whatever you want to say.
Meth?
But nicotine gum.
Nicotine helps really
Absolutely.
I'm a nicotine guy.
You're like, I'm fine. I don't need anything. You're popping nicotine in your mouth. I don't know what you guys.
Maybe I chewed a lot of Copenhagen, so that may have been.
That will certainly do it. So nicotine will help with metabolism, hunger, and estrogen. Now the thing about nicotine though is a little bit helps with estrogen. A lot of it raises estrogen.
Really? So I didn't know that.
So it's kind of like coffee. A little bit of coffee. It's like keep you regular, no problem. You crush coffee all day, you might be really messed up.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be completely transparent. Yeah. I just learned something that I did not know. I did not know that there was a connection between estrogen and nicotine.
I didn't know that either.
This was actually, I can't take credit for this. This is a Matt Porter teaching. So
no kidding.
Me and him were talking about this in April of 2019. I mean, it was right before he passed, but I still have the emails because we went back and forth about. It was actually for me, but it was about hunger.
How significantly is
just backing down estrogen?
Yeah. I mean, I just wondered if he had any numbers or anything that he threw out.
But we're talking about like probably as much as like a mastron, not like significant.
Okay, but enough to matter.
But it's right. It was something like if your estrogen's crushed and you're taking this on top, like maybe you should kind of like one of those things. Like be mindful that it could have an effect, but it does help. It's not something like I'm taking a gram test. I don't have to take an AI. I have freaking nicotine gum. It's like,
I'm just wondering if I'm going to get bitch tits from chewing Copenhagen.
Oh no. I mean, it was like I think. I mean, I might be wrong, but. Pouch of Copenhagen isn't it like 4 or 6 milligrams, something like that?
A can is 88 milligrams of nicotine.
Holy crap! Okay,
yeah, that's a whole can, but yeah.
Well, see, it's funny because I was just having a conversation with a client today about this. My friend Kenley, he said that he had been dipping since he was 16. He did it till he was 22, and we had like figured out that he had spent. It was like he said at least a can a day. Usually 2. I'm like, so at minimum you spent $6,100 between this time and this time on just dip. Because we were all talking about, it's funny, we were talking about using this as an appetite suppressant on the way back from legs the other day.
I have an issue with it though, just because the cost to benefit can be great for someone that would potentially start using more, develop a habit.
Right.
They went into a bodybuilding show and they came out, addicted to nicotine.
I 100% agree. And this is why, like, I mean, I don't recommend it, but I'll tell you this. I was pretty scared or at least timid about it.
Yeah.
Because when we were talking about it, I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm someone who's going to like have trouble with it or what the case may be. So I remember I only bought like a very small, whatever box of it. I'm like, this might be something I just need to throw away. So I don't spend a lot of money on it.
It is very addictive. No question.
Well, as soon as I had the first piece, I knew it wouldn't be a problem for me because it tasted so bad I'm like, it became one of those things like. It literally became something I dreaded, and I was so thankful. I'm like, oh God, I don't have to chew this awful gum anymore because I hated it.
Well, the gum is horrible.
Oh, it's not good. So I mean, obviously, like if it's something, if you enjoy like the buzz too much or anything, and I don't know, I think anyone should walk into this with caution. This just like anything else, like you don't want to be addicted to something for bodybuilding. That's silly.
Yeah.
We have enough problems as it is, but
we have enough issues.
Yeah, but I don't know. For me, it was one of those things like I was chewing 2 milligram pieces a day, and
Amateur.
Matt just told me. I know. Matt told me it's like Matt said get 2 milligrams and do 3 a day max. 3 is your max. Period. End of story. It's like we would treat it like if I only let you have 2 sodas. It's like you don't go over. It doesn't matter if you want it or not because that's the rules of prep, right?
Yeah. So wait out for yourself, guys. You know, if you have that personality, then like don't even touch it. You got anything else you want to add to the list?
I wish I remember the name. I guess like a fiber supplement can help.
Yeah.
Like if you're because just fiber in general helps. Like I think people overdo it with the vegetables way too often. And I don't say that as critical. I've overdone with the vegetables, and you don't look good. You don't feel good. You know, you walk around with you eating a bag of broccoli every meal. Well, you look like garbage. It doesn't matter.
You smell like garbage too. You smell pretty fucking bad because the gas coming out of you is not good.
So no one wants to be around you, and you look bad.
Right.
But I think that can help, and I know they sell like supplements that will like it has fiber in it, and you can eat it and then drink water, and it'll fill up your stomach. But I mean, at that point, come on, are you doing this to look better or not?
Right.
You have to accept that there's just some amount. I mean, and all fat burners have like some sort of appetite suppressant quality.
Yeah, I was going to add ephedrine to the list. Even a small amount of ephedrine can help. In fact, I've even used it on when I've dosed Clen. I keep the dose pretty low. I mean, even like I've gotten fat loss at 20 micrograms. So I've actually combined that with a low dose of ephedrine, and I've even taken it at like 10 to 12.5 milligrams, just enough. And it helps me personally to get my appetite down. And I've seen the same thing happen for other people. So I'm going to throw that one out there. I'd agree on that fiber. I'm going to go back to something you were initially saying, Nelson. And that was the fact that you're not going to ever like get rid of it. You have to accept it. And you were saying that too, Skip. It's like you have to accept it. At the end of the day, you're not putting as much into your body as you were before. You're literally creating a hole that you're now trying to fill with something. And I found myself like buying more stuff, on Amazon or going to the store, shopping, buying shit that I didn't really need just to have stuff to kind of like, make me feel good for the fact that I wasn't like filling my stomach with the things I wanted to eat. So I think that at the end of the day, there's a level of that acceptance that you just have to have. Otherwise, your prep is going to suck, or your diet. I don't care if you're prepping or not. Maybe you're just trying to get in better shape for the summer. It is not going to be a fun experience if you're constantly trying to run from hunger. Like Skip, you accepted it, man. And if you can switch your brain around and be like, hey, this hunger means that I'm getting where I want to be, then you're going to be in a much better place,
Right. Well, it can be distracting. It can get to the point where it's distracting you from not only just your, simple tasks and everything else, but your job and your career and things like that too, because that's all you think about if you're focused on it.
Yeah. All right. What else do we have here? Okay. Here's an older guy, Ross, over 60. The body's falling apart. Back L5, S1, both rotator cuffs torn. He's had surgeries for his, looks like neck, C7. Man, he's been through the ringer. Went out for a month with muscle atrophy of the side tricep and L5, S1. Let's see. What to do? I'm depressed. What can a person take or do for this? 3 surgeries, 3 years in a row, 3 years of bad luck, Ross.
first thing I would wonder is how many years he's been training.
Yeah.
Because your chronological age, if he's been training since he's been in his teens, or if he's been training 7 years, that could make a difference. But I would say to first look at your training. I'm not saying that he doesn't have issues where at 61 his body is, doesn't have limitations or anything else. But if he has a history of training, his body would be, I would think, would be relatively, I don't want to say adapted, but it wouldn't be this training hard, wouldn't be the shock to the system. I would look at the training and I would see if it's too heavy. I would check mechanics. I would check, like we were talking about earlier, hydration, all the things that can lead to, did he have signs prior to any of these injuries and he just pushed through anyway, ignored the signs, things like that. And I'm not saying that he may not be falling apart and that they're just out of the blue and the body is pretty much, the body's thrown up their hands and went, yeah, you're too fucking old. But at 51, I would like to think that that's not the case, because I certainly wouldn't want to be in that condition in only 10 years.
I wonder how he's training too.
Absolutely.
Is he following everything we talk about at Think Big and Advices and progressive overload and doing one set, to maximum failure? Because I feel like it's at 63, I might not want to do that anymore,
Right.
I don't know. What do you think, Nelson?
Oh, I mean, I'm certainly not an authority on, whether or not this guy, especially if he's been training 30, 40 years, what he should be doing. But if he's still trying to like do DC right now, maybe don't, man, and that's, it's not to say anyone can't, or to say it just, what happened is they kind of said Dante made all these freaks and then John Meadows fixed them, So it was kind of like one of those things where it's like eventually your body it's too old to do all this, and it might not be your fault. It might be your body's fault, or it could be that maybe you're just missing something, Maybe you don't sleep well, you're under recovered, you're not eating as much as you think, or it could be so many things. I can't pretend to know, but
yeah.
Nerve issues. I know he mentioned nerve issues. Well, I'll stay in my wheelhouse. I still think that there are probably, if he looks back and he really digs in deep, there are probably signs leading up to every single one of those injuries. Now, if he's saying, I can't go balls out like I did 20 years ago, well, welcome to the club. That's just natural. And you don't have to be 60 to have that happen. You can be, as you get into your 30s, you're going to have problems, and you're going to start to see things that you didn't see in your 20s. We're made of rubber when we're younger. I see some of these younger guys doing shit and I cringe and think, God, if that was me, I'd blow a disc or my kneecap would shoot across the fucking gym.
All right.
Okay, how about this? 1 second. Yeah. I just have to say this because this is the most embarrassing thing that's happened to me in so long. So I'm 30, and the other day, my daughter, who's 4, I was doing like we're just playing in the living room, and she jumped like over like, whatever, from one marker to another, and we were just putting things and trying to like see how far she could jump.
Yeah.
And I was going to impress her, and I'm like, stand back. And so I did a jump. It might have been 5 or 6 feet. It wasn't. I'm not like a long jumper. Yeah. But anyway, I did, and as soon as I landed, my knees hurt so bad. That's never happened before. And it was.
I told you, don't have kids. Kids ruin everything. They injure you. They cost you money.
Too late. It's like it's funny. That's another thing. It's like all those people who get so worried about not being able to have children on cycle. I'm like, well, didn't prevent anything.
There's a good topic. We could talk about that as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We're coming up with a lot of topics during the show.
All right. Thoughts on a blend of no ester compounds as pre-workout and specific legging muscle enhancement that include no ester boldenone, no ester nandrolone, and dianolone. I don't know dianolone.
No ester. Okay, my first reaction is I hate no estered gear. That's just me.
Yeah.
Because I like blood levels, to be stable and maintained and that sort of thing. This is just me. And I'll admit that I am not well versed and I don't have a ton of experience with no estered gear. But the reason I don't have that experience is because I know a little bit about them in the sense that unless you're a power lifter or you're doing something that you need your testosterone levels to fly through the roof for about 2 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know that is because anytime your test levels go up ridiculously like that, you have to battle with, estrogen rebound and stuff like that, trying to control other hormones. So unless you have an aggression issue or you're powerlifting or something, I don't see that there's going to be as much of a benefit to no ester gear, unless you want to pin it 5 times a day. And even then, somebody take it for me.
Have you guys ever had Boldenone Ace?
No, but I've heard nightmare stories about it.
Okay. It's the worst thing I've ever taken in my life.
Yeah, I bet.
That's heard. The Ace. I don't want to see what no ester Boldenone.
I know, man.
Yeah. Like Ace, I remember I got 2 shots in, that was it. And I had spent, I bought 4. I threw them all away. It was garbage. I mean, it's like, and this is, very good. It's like, I tried different things, warm it up, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. No, it's terrible. It's like, that is not meant to be like that, And so they made it like a freak compound, and you can make it into a no ester, but it's awful. Why? I don't know why you do that to yourself. I mean, I do like during some periods to use something like an oral or, heck, I've done methyltrin a couple times, and I've implemented that, but honestly, it's like the pre-workout shots, not really into them.
Usually, and what about localized growth? Because he was asking about localized growth too. I mean, I'm of the belief that you're just not gonna do that anyway with an AAS. So
it has to bypass the liver anyway. So it's leaving that spot. So unless what I could see is there could be benefit from having some pain in that spot, better mind muscle connection. Yeah. So I mean, you could just jab yourself with the insulin needle and go to the gym. It's where it's like, you're not even putting anything in. But
I think Drano would do the same thing. I'm pretty sure, and it might be a little cheaper. Don't do that for anybody who's listening to. Don't do that. I don't want to get sued. God damn.
It's funny. That's the next step. It's Tide Pods, and then it's Drano.
Exactly. The young kids did the Tide Pods. The older hardcore guys, we do Drano.
Yeah.
I think there's more of a group of people that are coming around to the no esters, and I would say it's with the heavy training that we've shifted towards. I've heard more and more guys that are commenting with questions on the shows, and I think it's because people are trying to push more weight in the gym, more progressive overload, and they're looking for a way to get stronger and thus grow more. You know what I mean? I think that's where they're coming from. I know that Jordan Peters is a big fan of that stuff, and he'll cycle it in for like 2 weeks at a time or whatever. Yeah. Just trying to break through plateaus in strength. I would say the vast majority of people aren't. The vast majority of pros that I know, that's not what they've done. So I'll throw that out there. And as far as that muscle growth thing goes, I don't see that either. I mean, I don't see localized muscle growth. I think there's something on paper that a test no ester can cause muscle growth. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some small amount, but I feel like the cons would way outweigh the pros.
Whenever I hear about like no ester or orals and thinking about actual muscle accrual in the pre-workout kind of setting. Yeah. I mean, the reason you take something there is for blood levels to spike right before. Right. Yeah. So in my mind, I always think you're getting because people will say like, oh, you're not going to gain muscle. It's like, yeah, but the reason you're doing it is to, let's say you do it for 4 weeks. It's to have your lifts up for 4 weeks, and your lifts being up and being able to kind of keep it going after you pull it. That's really, it's like the cumulative effect of having the strength. That's really what it is. It's not so much like this equals more muscle, but I guess I'm officially old school if I just would prefer to take Anadrol than like no ester drug, but they're all all hurt so bad.
Yeah, no shit. Let me spin off on what Leo just posted, because I think that his statement that I read it down here, which is kind of cool that we can see those comments. He makes a good point.
What did he say?
But he was saying that pre-workout, I'm paraphrasing, but that there is a benefit because a lot of us will use orals. And again, I'm paraphrasing, orals prior to as well. I don't disagree that there are, he put it back up. Cool. That there is a benefit, much like Nelson was saying, with, increasing the blood levels during training. My thing is I think it's splitting hairs. And I'm going to step on some toes, I think, with this. So I want to be very careful how I say this. Because I certainly don't want to offend Jordan or anybody else, because Jordan knows his shit. There's no question there. And him thinking outside of the box, I think, is a great thing. But a lot of people are latching on to, I think, again, this is just my opinion, a lot of people are latching on to things now like no ester gear, much like they grasp things like mint and things that come around. It's almost like they're saying, well, the EQs and the trends, that's just, we've been doing that. That's boring. There has to be other things that work. I'm not against that thinking, that philosophy, but they're almost grasping. It's like, it's something new. It's something that hasn't been thought of, or we need to try. I think, again, though, that it's splitting hairs. I even when I take an oral pre-workout and I run it for 4 weeks, even if it's strong and it's, Anadrol or whatever else, I'm not going to be able to quantify. I can't go back and quantify and go, right, wow, man, 4 weeks, because I could not take it prior to the workout. And if I'm on Anadrol, I'm going to see an increase in strength anyway. I don't know. Maybe there's other things that you can't quantify, like aggression, that you may be able to train a little bit harder. But I just don't think, again, coming back to cost to benefit, I just don't see it. There are some things that we do on paper because they add up and they make sense. I think it's very similar to GH timing. I don't even know, and a lot of top guys have said this when we've had conversations in the past, back in the message board days. We don't even know or can be sure that timing of growth hormone is really going to make that much of a difference, because it sometimes comes down to, a lot of us agreed with, it sometimes just comes down to whether you respond to growth hormone or you don't respond to growth hormone. Yeah. And it's almost just like, just take it and get it in your fucking system. And it's either going to work or it's not. I think that a lot of what we do is splitting hairs. And I'm not saying that's bad, because we can come across things that, oh shit, this works a little bit better. Thinking outside of the box is great. But I think in this particular situation, my opinion, I think it's splitting hairs.
Okay.
It's funny. I don't remember which podcast this was, but I'm pretty sure it was with you guys. Was Andrew Barry on with you guys?
Yeah. Not too long ago.
Okay. This is okay. Then this is the one where he was talking about BBC.
Yeah.
It's like my bodybuilding brain and then my logical brain.
You're
it's
right.
Like my logical brain says, take it, get it in your system. I mean, whatever. Then my bodybuilding brain goes, bro, pre-workout.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you're kind of thinking about like GH. Just take the GH. You're going to grow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But bro.
Yeah.
The studies show.
Yeah.
It's like the studies show with 2 IUs. They don't show with 8.
Yeah.
So it's like it's on a regular person versus, like what are you doing? They're not trying to. It's like, oh, they lost a kilogram of body fat. It's like, all right, well, we're trying to get down from 8 to 4%. So maybe the lipolysis. It's like things. Once they get more intricate, they get a little more specific. But I agree with you 100%. It's like I think when I usually start doing stuff like this, splitting hairs, timing things, it's just like, okay, what is probably the optimal thing? And even if it doesn't work, I will inconvenience myself to this much of a degree.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm not going to get to the point where it's like, if I'm going to take 12, which is crazy, but let's say like 12, I use a GH. I'm going to do 2 every 3 hours. And, it's like, to some point, you're getting crazy. When you're waking up at the middle of the night, and you're like, okay, so it's 3 hours from when I went to bed. Now I pin it. Then it doesn't need to be all that.
Yeah.
But if it were something like, it's convenient for me. I wake up, I train, I work at 8 o'clock in the morning, so I train at 5. I take my Anadrol first thing in the morning. Perfect. Do it. It's convenient. You will remember then.
Right.
All right. We got one from Paige here. She says, lately, I've been hearing females using a cycle of both Anavar and Primo. I always thought it was one or the other. Just trying to understand why using both at the same time would be a thing. Let's see. And she had another question too. So I'll stop there and we'll get back to her. And Paige to put her into perspective, is a figure competitor, I believe.
Okay. I mean, you're allowed to do as many things at once as you want.
It's kind of a tough question to answer because it's almost like, I would compare it to this. Will you get more out of Primo and Anavar versus just taking more Anavar, especially when the dose is low? Probably not. In this particular situation, I don't think that someone's going to add Primo and go, wow, this Primo, or be able to compare it to just say increasing your Anavar dosage. And I'm comparing this to her being a figure competitor and the benefit that she may get out of it because she's the one that asked the question. But I don't think you're going to see much of it. It's a milligram to a certain degree. Someone can pick me apart on that and I would understand, but milligram to milligram type thing. It's not like it's Anadrol or something that, would show a drastic or dramatic difference. So, but it's not, to cut to her question specifically, I don't consider that uncommon. I mean, Primo and Anavar is again, it comes down to dosage, but those two compounds together for a female, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would prefer those over adding Winstrol to the mix because I've heard a lot of Anavar and Winstrol being used together. I'm not a big fan of Winstrol personally with girls.
In a pre-contest or off-season?
Pre-contest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that makes more sense. I don't know. I think it's kind of just what your level of competing and, I guess, running compounds and what you're comfortable with. Because, you can take both. Off-season, I usually don't have people do multiple compounds. It's usually one. For simplicity, for not being a pain, and honestly, with I would say with most females, and I mean you can agree or disagree, most of them can grow pretty well off of Anavar,
Yeah, and I agree.
Not even very much. So I mean, I had a women's physique competitor who won a pro show, and almost the whole prep she was taking 10 milligrams of Anavar.
Yeah, I believe it. I've seen girls win their pro cards using very little, in women's physique.
If it's legit, it's like 10 milligrams is pretty good. And you don't have to stay at 10 milligrams, but let's say, 10 milligrams of real Anavar is pretty good. And usually when people are like, no, this isn't enough. It's like, I don't like be super critical, but you almost get into like, okay, if it's real, it's like, are you training hard enough? Because man, like lots of people change from this super fast.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys this. I got a question for you three guys, or you two guys, not three, because I am asking a question. But nonetheless, when it comes down to the compounds themselves, do you look at? I'm trying to not give away my response, but the question's going to give it away.
Yeah.
We're talking more about sides than we are actual progress, because I've always felt that. Look, just like we're talking about, I would rather a woman not take Winstrol, but yet if you take Winstrol instead of Anavar, you take it in the same dosage. Instead of taking 10 grams of Anavar, you take 5 milligrams of Winstrol and you take 5 milligrams of Anavar. Technically, basically, your progress is going to be roughly the same for this discussion. But the sides, I look at it from a sides component. You could take trend, you could take DHB, but the sides are where you have to be careful, and we obviously are more careful with females than we are males, because if you get male side effects when you're a male, it's not as bad as
nothing happens.
Side effects when you're a female. Yeah, exactly. So I think the women should look at it more, and she may have been asking in that context, but I don't know if it was clear. So from a benefit standpoint of what you're going to see in the gym as far as muscle mass and things like that, it's going to be roughly the same. It's the sides when you change these compounds that can change sometimes dramatically. Sure. And the dose doesn't have to be that big for females. So I just wanted to throw that out there, see if you guys agreed, but I figured you did.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, especially with Winstrol, if you're going to take Winstrol, you need to take less than you would Anavar.
Yeah.
But even at a low dose, I don't disagree with that, but I'm just saying, like, if we're using real low doses, like it's 5 milligrams oral, I don't know if that would, I think as it starts to get up higher, then of course the side effects become more dramatic when you get up in higher.
Oh yeah, of course. But let's say whomever, 20, like a figure competitor, 20 milligrams of Anavar, usually not that many sides, you know, and most of them, they come to you running 20, 30 milligrams, and you're like, 30, what are you doing? But let's say like you're 20 milligrams of Vanor, that's pretty common. 20 milligrams of Winstrol,
right?
You shouldn't be running that too long, lest the sides get out of hand.
Yeah, I agree.
So, you know, you could run that a couple weeks, or even let's say like the last week. But if you're talking 6, 8, 12, that's not something that's realistic, in my opinion, to do it wisely. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I would say for the most part, when you're getting down to just milligrams, yeah, I agree. But I don't know. I guess I do see Winstrol as harsher.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
She's coming into a show now, so I think she's talking about prep. You know,
okay.
And I think just kind of put it in a little more context. And I think that, like, I was thinking a couple things here just to kind of add in. I mean, I think you guys are right. I think that that's my first thought when we talk about women and steroids, my first thought is like the side effects, not necessarily the benefits. But yeah, you stack two steroids together. Do you guys think there's a synergy? Do you guys believe in synergy between steroids? Between steroids in general? Because I think there is. I mean, I think that taking 500 deca, in my experience, produced better results with less side effects than, say, taking 1,000 test. Skip?
I don't know that there's not a synergy. I'm thinking this because my initial reaction was absolutely yes. But then the more I think about it while you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know that there isn't, but I question whether some people, because it's so individual, that some people just don't do well on certain compounds. And I don't know, when you say synergy, I think that it's more, in my brain anyway, that it's more across the board, like this and this will work. But sometimes it doesn't, because, you know, I use myself as an example when it comes to Primo. I just don't seem to get much out of Primo as an example. So I don't know that I don't know if I would consider that a synergy with another drug, or I just don't respond very well to it and I would respond with something else. Here's another example I'd throw at you. I have used, say, you know, Tren and NPP together, and I thought that it was awesome and great. And a lot of people don't like to do that. So I don't know, you know, if you ask most people, I think they would say, yeah, I don't run Tren with, you know, NPP or DECA. And then I do it, and I'm like, oh, wow, this works really well.
Yeah.
So
I kind of got us off topic. Sorry. What were you going to say though, Nelson, about this topic?
Oh, what was the question again?
Just synergy.
I was just about to agree with Skip. So, oh yeah. No, it's funny because I kind of follow along the same as with Skip. It's like my knee-jerk reaction, like immediately was like, yes, of course there's a synergy. And then like I was thinking about it, and I'm like, well, it's like how much is synergy and how much is just each compound is awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I would say if I were to take, I don't know.
How about Tren and Winstrol? Oh, I thought you were going with compounds. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No,
because I can see Tren as Tren, and let me slow down. Tren and Winstrol, I would consider, I think most people would, that's a pretty synergistic. But is it just that those compounds tend to work for most people? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, that's why I can't figure out.
You're right. I mean, but yeah, I would say like if I'm, we'll say Tren and Winstrol, if I'm taking, I don't know, what's a responsible dose? 300 milligrams of Tren.
Yeah, that's responsible a day.
Yeah, I know. It's like anytime like you talk about Tren, like people like they look at your I don't know, even if you said like 525, you know, they're like, "Whoa, bro!" I'm like, "Dude, I'm like, it's like 2 weeks. Calm down." Like, I'm a grown man. But you know, let's say you're doing whatever 350 Winstrol, which is like something I do in the off season. It's like you put 100 every other day with your test or something. I'd say you're doing 350 Winstrol or 350 Tren, and then let's say 50 Winstrol every day. That works awesome. And I would say you're absolutely not going to get the same effects from just adding 15 milligrams more Tren. And you know what? You might not want to, because whenever you reach, I don't know, there's probably a sweet spot for everybody, right?
Right.
Because there's definitely a point where if I'm taking Tren, I don't want to go over that, lest the side effects just get too much. And it's not that, you know, I know some people, their idea of side effects is like, oh, I can't handle it. It's so harsh. It's like that's when you're way too much. It's like, I mean, are you sleeping well?
Yeah.
Or
Right.
is it just awful? Are you lactating? That's probably a terrible idea. Maybe back it down a little bit.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
you know, just because you have Caber doesn't mean that,
You need to use it.
yeah.
Right.
You
I
need to
don't know.
push until you need to use it.
Right. Just push it till you have to take a gram of Caber every day.
All right. I'll dial us back in because she had one more question.
Yeah.
I hope that we helped her out there. If she
Yeah,
doesn't,
it was
listen, I
rough.
guess if we were to give advice, I would just say that if you're doing well with just Anavar, then stick with just Anavar, you know, and that, like Nelson said, you can get really good results, you know, when a girl won a pro show on how many milligrams? 10?
That was 10.
So there is that.
So that was all the way till 4 weeks she was at 10.
Oh, and
Yeah,
I'll
if
say
she would have.
go ahead.
Go ahead. I say if she doubled the dosage, she probably could have gotten her pro card in half the time. I just want to be
No, that was
clear
it was
on
a
that.
pro show.
Oh, gotcha.
He qualified for the Olympia on that.
Damn.
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah.
I guess too, my thought is that steroids are there to more or less support muscle in the prep. And as a figure competitor, I really do feel like for a lot of girls, at least 10 milligrams Anavar would be plenty. Do you need to push that up higher in the off season? I don't know, but it's all individual. But yeah, in fact, man, I feel like steroids can even cause problems for girls getting my thing is I want to see a girl be able to get lean enough and get hard enough. That's usually the challenge, It's not like I haven't seen girls have like a big issue with like, oh man, she's losing size as much as like, well, she could have been tighter. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know. One other quick one she had is, and I'll be interested to get both of your guys' opinions on this. Typically, what is a good time to have your last leg day before a show?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm kind of old school. I use the old school approach, and I usually cut cardio and leg training at roughly about a week out. But again, there are always variables, but typically that's what I like to do, because I think that if you're dealing with inflammation coming into the last week in your legs, you're going to lose detail and separation. So, some people may need to do something there, but even things like squats and stuff like that, I don't like to do a lot of heavy type of shit like that, even at a week out. So I don't go for the pump, and I don't go for the even leg extension, leg curls type stuff the last week. But that was a she.
Yeah.
That was a female. That's Paige.
It's the same girl. Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody's going to be different. I would say it's a very safe way to do it. Then from there, if you feel like, well, maybe I could get a little bit of work in, you could, with future shows, you could try to get some light isolation work in there. I don't know that it would be terribly beneficial. I think you're safe with a week, but that's just how I approach it.
I have done a week, 10 days, 14 days. Everyone, like, it's funny, a couple of years ago, people were talking about 14 days, like you need to take 2 weeks off, fully recover, and because you're still doing cardio for another week, so you're not really going to be recovered. I don't think my legs looked as good. I felt like when I wait just a week, that's when they look the best. Any longer than that, and I don't have like crazy 3D stupid hang around muscle. So if I go too long, they kind of don't have like the same fullness.
Right.
So I like a week. I mean, it's funny because it's like the kind of the stereotypical like the bodybuilder thing, but a week works. There's a reason why most people do it like that.
Yeah. And I think filling out can be difficult too, because if you're doing a lot of cardio, and it depends on the cardio that you're doing, and you try, they're the larger muscles, in your body, they're going to be hard to fill out if they're very, very depleted. And then you could end up full everywhere else, and you could not be full, in quads and things like that. I
actually think that's like the more important thing that you said there is like you cut cardio and leg training there. And it's funny because we were at the Chicago Pro, and Akeem Williams got into the elevator with us. I mean, this was in Atlanta, so it's the Chicago Pro.
Yeah.
But he got in the elevator with us. He's drenched in sweat. This is the day before the open show.
Huh.
And we're like, geez, like, is it raining outside? And he's like, no, I just did cardio.
Huh.
The day before. And it's funny because I told who I was, he's going to look terrible. This is not going to be good. he looked diced.
Yeah.
Like it was funny because like it was the best I've ever seen him. And he won that show. He won the show. And it's funny because it was a really close call and it came down to 1 point at the end. And I'm like, maybe that last session was like what pushed him over the edge.
Yeah, exactly. Or was he that good in spite of it?
It could very well be.
Yeah.
It could very well be. It's just one of those things where I guess I would say, I mean, I don't always know because certainly I would have never, ever, ever had him do that. Mm-hmm. But Oscar had him do that and he walked on stage and that is the best I've ever seen him.
Well, maybe they were watching it. I mean, not maybe. Oscar was obviously watching him really close all the way in.
He was in there right next to him, you know?
And it made sense. You know what I mean? Yeah. It made sense. I think there has been times where I've seen cardio be beneficial later in the week coming into it. You know, get the food moving around, get the blood circulating. But it's not like something I would say, here's my template. You know what I mean? Exactly.
It's funny. I don't know. I'm sure if you guys go to a show, I mean, Skip, you don't normally go to shows, do you?
Not as much as I used to.
Yeah, but you know the deal. It's like when you go to a show and you're at a gym like 2 days out, all the bikini girls are still there doing the cardio.
Yeah. Yep.
You know
that I do.
So
that I do.
It also depends on the division. You know, it's like maybe they need to look flat. You know, it's no bikini girls coming in bursting full or anything. You know.
I don't want to drag the topic out, but I wanted to add one thing. We also don't know how much cardio and to what extent. We think of cardio and maybe it was intense, maybe it was short, maybe it was 2.5 hours and it was low intensity and he was in a rubber suit and they wanted to move water because he had spilled drastically.
100%.
And then he woke up the next day and he was dry as fuck and full as fuck. I mean, that could be too.
Yeah,
he could have been spilled and then they fixed it. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're probably not going to get to all the questions here, guys, just because I don't have the stamina to stay up and do them. But we'll get through what we can and we'll save the rest of the questions for the next episode. I'm just going to take the next one I had down here. I am curious as to how all you guys, what your methods are for stack design for yourself and for your athletes. There is a school of thought that roughly 10 milligrams per kilogram is a standard range of combined compounds during a blast phase for an intermediate bodybuilder. It is something I've picked up from following Dan Duchesne and his theories, just wondering how you all go about it. And actually, I'm going to tie two questions into one. That's the kind of host I am. Because we can't get them all, so I'm going to try to do two here. There's another guy who says that this is the guideline protocol for the off season by he says a certain bodybuilding coach, not saying the names. Don't want you to be biased or unbiased. What do you three think of such approach? Note is a rough diagram that gets adapted and individualized based on the athlete. His athlete's needs and context. So he has a graph here showing the weeks, and then it's milligrams versus kilograms, and then he's got a chart to figure it all out.
Is that for gear?
Yes, milligrams. So I'm going to guess. Yeah, he's talking gear. What's your thought here, Skip?
If it's from another prep coach that he doesn't want to name, I don't want to comment out of respect for whoever that prep guy is. Whether I like him or hate him, I would have the same response. I'm not going to beat up the guy asking the question, but I would say that if someone posted anything that I've done with my client and posted online to get, opinions, I would probably be mildly offended.
Now, this looks like this looks like he's put this out, I'm guessing. Like the coaches put
okay. All right. If that's the case.
That's
okay.
what I'm guessing. Right. Yeah.
In milligrams, I'd have to see it. Going back to the first question, I don't use formulas for anything. And that's not to say that they're bad, but I don't use them for calories. I don't use them for, gear dosing or anything else. And the reason for that is this simple. And I'll use two examples. If I have an NFL lineman who might come into town at, 360 pounds or even sometimes higher, if he's listening, I'm not taking a shot at him, but nobody knows exactly who it is. His by formula, his calories would be significantly higher than say 130-pound figure girl. Yet I have seen 130-pound figure girls routinely take in far more calories than this particular NFL lineman to get lean. So the formulas, the reason I don't use them is because they just don't.
He's
they're
talking
just
gear.
Not that good. They're basic starting points for an individual, for a person. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know if a lot of prep guys use that type of an approach.
He's talking gear though.
Okay, but as far as milligram,
Milligram per kilogram.
Okay, fair enough.
I confused you because I combined two questions. Yeah,
it's the same premise in the sense that coming back to the formula concept, I just don't like it because I tend to run cycles or help to set up cycles for clients based on what they have done in the past, how long or how much of a history they have with gear use, how they responded to it, things like that.
Yeah.
Again, the formulas, I'm just not a big fan of that approach.
I'm not either, man. I'm just not.
Okay. I thought you were going to say I missed it. And I was like,
no. I'm 100% with you because I looked at that and I'm like, at the end of the day, it's like it's just not the way that my brain works. And here's the deal, man, is that a formula would be good. I think a formula could be interesting to somebody that's new. And if there's a prep coach out there that's found a formula that works for him, then more power to him. But I wouldn't say I wouldn't be comfortable trying to take that formula and adapting it for myself. My experience has come through, it's years of just seeing a lot of physiques and learning, asking a lot of questions from people who are smarter than me, and then seeing things for myself to understand how to do it. And through all of that, I would say the exact same thing as you, Skip, that it's super individualized, that, it all comes down to somebody's previous experience and how they've responded to different compounds. And I talked to a guy who is an elite level power lifter who I had suggested to use 25 milligrams of Anadrol, and it's just like, for him, it made a lot of sense, but you wouldn't think that, based off of a formula. I don't know, but I don't know. What do you think, Nelson?
I've never used a formula for gear. That's not really the way I think, as far as, you're 200 pounds, you need to be using this much testosterone. I guess I don't think like that. Especially since, let's say you're 6 feet, 220. I'm 5'5", 220.
Right. What about body fat percentage? Same thing.
Right,
are you gonna dose your gear based on total weight? Yeah.
Right. So it's like I've been taking gear for a little while, and then this guy, it's like he's never touched anything, and he's skinny, and he's 6'4". Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense that he would start on as much gear as I would need.
Right.
So to me, and I'm not gonna step all over this person. To me, that's illogical, and that could be because I don't have the scientific background to understand his formula.
Or maybe we're not getting the whole story from him.
Or maybe there's a whole other thing that goes with that graph.
Yeah.
But I still think that the basics are around the same. When you're starting, probably test only, 300, 500 milligrams, you're off to the races. Mm-hmm. And whether you are 160 pounds on stage or you are 200 pounds just starting, I'm not going to do anything different. I would still start with someone around there. I'm not going to start someone on a SARM or multiple compounds at once, or a kick-started oral. I'm never going to ever do that.
And you can always go up. That's the thing I think sometimes people don't understand.
If you get it wrong, you can just go up.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. To me, it's really hard to kind of. But I agree with the comparison to. It's the same with nutrition. I'm when someone tells me what they're eating, I don't go, okay, well, you're 185, so times 10 for calories.
Right.
I've never done that,
I can understand where the formula, though, if I just take everything I know and I completely wipe it out and I say, gosh, where would I start? A formula would be really helpful to give me some type of black and white starting point. So even if for those people who don't know and they use the formula, that's fine. Then once you get that, where you're starting with the formula, then you have to start to read your body and pay attention. And I think a lot of people you need time and you need that experience under your belt to be able to read the feedback that your body is giving you and then be able to make those adjustments.
Yeah.
And it's trial and error. I mean, that's the reality of it. And when people say, well, I don't want to do the trial and error, I want someone else who knows how to do it. We're basically doing the same thing.
Right.
We're reading what you're doing and we're taking your feedback and we're seeing, and now we might save you some time because we're better off at reading it without being biased, and where someone's individual brain can kick in and go, oh, I'm hungry. Oh, I need a cheat meal. Oh, I need more or less. We don't have to deal with those biases.
Also, you've seen it so many times. You've had a lot more experience, so you can make, you know, and that's the thing with a coach, and you can make those choices and decisions quicker. I think that would be the other part of that story too.
Right. And just like with food, if you saw someone was taking 600 tests, 400 EQ, you're not gonna be like, oh, well, you got to be on a grandma test and 800 EQ because your body weight says that. You would be like, oh, you'd be like, all right, this is working for you, you're growing. We're just gonna leave it right here, and then we're gonna change this. We're gonna change this.
Yeah.
You know? So it's situational. It might be a great starting point. You know, if you're very new at this and you've been doing this for a couple of years and you're kind of like, where do I go from here? It's like, well, my body weight's increased this. I want to try this. Go for it. Knock yourself out. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think part of bodybuilding is experimentation and learning your body and kind of just trying out a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's never something I would use personally.
Sorry about that, guys.
All right. I'll see if I can find one more here.
That was my phone. Not that
is that what that was?
Yeah, I was propping it up. I keep it propped up so I can see it without having to really look down and, you know, look like I'm not listening, or, you know what I mean? So I have it propped up and I had it too far and it, you know.
All right. I got, let's see here. Okay. This kind of goes back to when we were talking about training. If I'm doing unilateral exercise, should I go to failure with each side or do the same number of reps, even if the one side hasn't reached failure? Will one side grow more if I do more reps?
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier. That's the post that I was referencing when we were talking about imbalances. So the only thing I would add to that is that I wanted to say earlier, but we had gone a little long on it, was I don't believe, and this is just a personal thing. It's not, and I understand that I have OCD issues, but I will never, if I had a bad imbalance, I would not train one side. I would figure out how to train both sides and to figure. Yeah. There are those people who will do a couple extra reps on one side. That's just not something, because then you get into this big gray area. Is 2 enough? Should it be 3? Is that too much? It's like you can't look and go, because you're always going to have one side based on coordination and your, the way the nervous system is set up, that is, you're going to favor one side. And bodybuilding is funny because you want that perfect balance, but it's rarely there. There have been pros forever and ever, hallelujah, now in the 80s and everything else. Richie Gaspari had an arm that was 1.5 inches bigger than the other. They're not always going to be perfectly the same, and you're not going to notice it. Well, you will individually on yourself. You'll notice those things. But even really good judges, unless it's a pec or a ladder, it's something that's right next to, and then you can see the symmetry or the asymmetry. You're not going to notice. It has to be a pretty dramatic difference in a leg or an arm before it's going to be noticed.
Yeah. One of my listeners from Bodybuilding Nerds, I think it was, I don't know, he might be listening here. I wish I could remember who it was. Maybe he is listening. Maybe he'll message me after this. He had such a cool analogy, the way he put it. So imagine if you have an imbalance. Let's say like one pec is, we'll just like call this a number, is the way he put it. One pec is a 6, the other pec is a 5. If you can move those up several numbers, and now this one is a 9, let's say this one's an 11 and this one's a 10, it's still imbalanced, but that imbalance, that asymmetry is going to look a lot smaller if you can continue to grow both muscles.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I thought that was a really good way of putting it.
Mm-hmm. You turned one up to 11. So
Exactly.
Yes. You got any thoughts to throw in on that one, Nelson? I know we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier.
no, I mean, I agree. I was able to throw it in Spinal Tap reference, so I feel like I did my duty. And for everyone,
It was a win.
Whoever hasn't seen This Is Spinal Tap, I'm very disappointed in you. You should all be watching that. I would like to go back just a brief second. I'm very surprised and disappointed that Skip doesn't like Primo.
Yeah,
I know. I am not a fan of it. I ran it at high dose, and I'm like, God damn, this just does not seem. And the second I changed that one compound out, it was great. I was like,
oh, really, man?
Yeah.
I really like it.
Yeah,
but that shows the difference. I mean, that's a good example right there. You know, we've both been at it for a while, and you like it and you respond well to it, and I'm looking at it going, yeah, this could go right in the trash.
It's funny. There's like I know there's like every time once in a while it's like I don't get stuff that's what it's supposed to be, right? So it's like I've had it where it's been MPP and I can just tell that is MVP, that is not Primo.
Yeah.
But let's say more recently I had some Bayer amps that I know are legit, and I had the best experience to where I'm like almost looking forward to doing it again. It's like I looked so good. I don't know. It's funny. I really like it.
I work with a guy who everything he took, he didn't get a good response from. Like we tried.
Buddy,
this is
golf.
a guy. Yeah, what's that?
I said golf.
Yeah, hey, we took. We tried. Testing Anavar, testing Deca, like everything. Everything was bad news. I shouldn't say testing Anavar, testing D-ball, testing Deca. We tried EQ. Nothing was going really good. And then he tried Masteron, and he started looking better. And he started improving. And then we thought, like he was growing and getting in shape. And I was like, I said, I got a crazy idea. You haven't really responded to things well in your off season. Let's throw a little mast in and see what happens. We use some master on an infate. And and obviously he's in a surplus. He's running tests. He's going to grow. This is more hormone than he would have had otherwise, was my thought. And he did he's not a huge guy, but he made really good progress. He's got, some decent muscle on him now. But yeah, testing Masteron was a great growing compound for him. Just like then I thought, well, if that worked good, why don't we try Primo? Know? And Primo worked really well too.
Okay, so why is that? Explain it.
I talked to.
I was gonna.
Okay,
I
talked to. I jumped the gun.
No, you're okay. But I was looking at one other component too, and that was SHBG.
We looked at all that, and I can't remember where it was now, but everything made sense. He has a really weird response in general. There's some stuff going on there. Like his TRT is over 300 milligrams to get him in range.
Wow.
But it wasn't a free testosterone issue, because when you were talking about the Masteron, I'm like, oh my God, he just had high SHBG. And when he took the Masteron, basically you can have high levels of total tests and it doesn't fucking matter because your free testosterone comes in the shit. So, but that may not, that's what came to mind though, originally.
You know what it was? I'm still putting the pieces together on him. But I talked to Victoria about it, and I think there's some stuff. It's pretty deep in there though, that relate to why that may be. If I do figure it out, I'll bring it back and let you guys know. But yeah, I just wanted to, express that. Yeah, everybody has such a different response. He's like an extreme example though,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. It's funny. It does give a little bit of hope to some people though, who are like, oh, well, maybe I just haven't tried that combo. It's like, that's why I'm not Mr. Olympia. It's like, I haven't had the Mastron.
I can still win it all. It's just Mastron.
I can still win it all. Yeah.
So Skip, how's your client training going? I know I've seen you with a bunch of people and stuff down there in Florida.
You mean my one-on-one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going. First and foremost, I just like being out of the house and socializing. It is very cool, very fun. Clients are awesome. I really enjoy it. The commute I could do without, but it's a necessary evil because I don't live there anymore. But it's pretty cool. Manny, I'm not training him one-on-one, But Manny down in Miami, he's coming back from that torn bicep, and he's back to being able to train. It's funny because I was going to note earlier you were talking about Fitzwater, and they don't lose any. And I get updated pics from Manny every week, and I'm like, could you just lose something? Throw me a bone. Like, no one is going to guess that this fucker hasn't been training. It's incredible.
When did he start back training? Because I just saw a picture of him. Like he must have posted yesterday or something, and I'm like, geez, he looks good.
Yeah, he is still not 100%, though. He's very, very close. So he's training things like training his upper body. He continued to train arms brutal. I mean, they would hold him down in the angle leg press and things like that. And of course, he had to be careful with his grip and pulling against the bicep. I had to hit him up with a very nice email saying, and he'll back me up if he's listening, those neutral grip, narrow T-bar rows while your bicep is still recovering is not going to be the best option right now.
No, I think not.
Yeah, I'm like, I realize they're not under grip. You did get rid of that grip, and that's a good thing. But let's go overhand and let's not go so narrow. So he's really nice. Coming back. He's doing well. Yeah, it was a very nice, very nice email, and he will back me up on that. He's coming back. He's doing real well. He's just not 100% yet, but he's very, very close. And I will give him this. He has been very patient. I really thought that when he first had the injury, I'm like, this motherfucker isn't going to wait 3 weeks, and he's going to back bang, and I'm going to have to stop down there and poke my head in and go, what are you doing over there? But he has been very good. He really he's being very, very smart about it. So he's got a good support system. His girlfriend is awesome, and she's got a medical background, so she helps to keep him in check too. So it's a good combo.
Nice.
It's funny because like I usually have to like check myself a little bit because I do want to be really over the top. Like, what are you doing with some people? But I like at first I would be like, okay, now there's the way that we know it should be done. How would you do it? Would you be back this soon? Or would you wait the whole time like the doctor said? And so it's kind of like, all right, well, maybe he gets a little grace, you know?
Yeah. But it's hard to jump on somebody when they're so passionate and they're so because you can relate to it. You're like, God, what would I
know. And that's the thing. It's like it's hard to be mad at Martin for like 2 seconds because he's just so excited to be back in the gym, and you know, someone like loves bodybuilding that much. And you know, it's funny because that we've talked about this before too. Brady King, he's the same way. He's too happy for me to get really mad. Yeah. You know, it's like loves it too much.
Are you?
And I think there's an. Oh, go ahead. No, I'll just say there's an argument there that because these guys recover, or because they're bigger and they grow more, that they recover from workouts so much quicker, that they're going to recover from injuries quicker too than us mere mortals.
Right.
So there's that component too.
Yeah, and obviously it's like you're recovering faster than a normal person.
Right.
So if you're, you know, especially if there's growth hormone or whatever, it's not like if your dad got hurt, you know.
Yeah.
It's like they have, like, doctors have this in mind, like, you need 8 weeks. It's like, you probably need 8 weeks. Could we do it in 4? Maybe. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. It's probably not the smartest thing, but is it possible?
Yeah. All right. Listen, let's wrap this thing up, guys. For another episode of Blood, Sweat, and Gear, I'm here with Skip Hill. Check out teamskip.com. Check out Nelson over on the gram. I'll have everybody's Instagrams in the show notes. Check out our sponsor, True Nutrition. Did I already say that? I was going to. I don't know. I'm getting tired. It's time for me to go. I'll see you guys.